The island of Ireland, the place I call home, lies here on the western edge of Europe. But it's not alone. A scattering of smaller islands hug its coastline, hardy offspring, if you like, protecting the mother island from the wilds of the Atlantic. From Rathlin in the north to Cape Clear in the south. From mighty windswept cliffs to lush subtropical Edens. These islands have long been a source of inspiration and of myth. They're home to a rich diversity of wildlife and a wide range of people too. People trying to live in harmony with the environment and with a history as old as any in Ireland. Each island has a unique story, but together they tell a tale we can all learn from. This is my journey across the Emerald Isles. I love being from Ireland. It's a wonderful country. You don't need me to spell out its charms. But what about our islands? As somebody who's lived on a number of fictional islands in my time, I'm enthralled by real ones, especially the wildly impressive but largely unsung islands off the coast of Ireland. I'm on a captivating journey around these island gems, and it's a journey of never-ending surprises. For this leg of my journey, I'm continuing down the ruggedly handsome west coast, visiting some islands where the dramatic landscapes have been fashioned by the full force of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm starting right in the middle of the country, where the three Aran Islands lurk mischievously in Galway Bay. From there, I head south, out along the Dingle Peninsula to the Blasket Islands. Next, beautiful Valentia, rich in history and surrounded by gleaming waters, teeming with life. And finally, to the otherworldly island of Skellig Michael. Eight miles out from the Galway coast are the Aran Islands, population about 1,300. And the inspiration for the imaginary craggy island of Father Ted. But the main town of Kilronan has a more vibrant feel about it, and that's where I step ashore. Straight away, it's clear that this is the land of the famous Aran jumper. When I was a boy, I hated these jumpers. They were itchy and not very cool. Now, I love them. Almost enough to wear one. These islands are synonymous with this particular garment, the Aran sweater, made here on the Aran Islands. But there's more to these islands than woolly jumpers. The cliff tops have some of the oldest archaeological remains in Ireland, including the World Heritage Site of Dún Aonchasa. Over 3,000 years old, it sits atop a 100-metre cliff on what feels like the edge of the world. 1,000 miles of ancient stone walls crisscross the islands. And among them, the remains of numerous early Christian sites, especially here on the main island of Inishmore. I'm on my way now to meet a man who used to be a priest here on the Aran Islands. I can identify with that. He's going to fill me in on the early Christian history of Inishmore and tell me what it was like to be a real priest on the real craggy island. Hi, Dara.
Hi, Ardal. Nice to see you.
Keeping lovely to see you.
Walter Road, you're very welcome.
How important was the Aran Islands early Christianity, like in terms of Christianity as a whole?
So if you read the history of Celtic Christianity now, not Roman Christianity, the patriarch of that monastic tradition is Enda. His sister had been converted by St. Patrick, then she converted him. So he's the very source of what we now call today Celtic Christianity.
St. Enda was a warrior turned monk, and it was through him Irish monasticism spread throughout Ireland, Britain, and Europe. The monastic movement was born here, and at one stage there were 10 monasteries just on this one island.
He would never allow his community to be more than 12 monks, because that's what Jesus had, 12 disciples. So if more than that came out, he'd send them off to found a monastery somewhere else on the island. It had become a famous place for a form of monasticism, which was very exciting. The saying at the time was, if you can't get to Rome or to Jerusalem, go to Aran.
Really? Why were they attracted to this place more than any other place?
Well, I think the place is hugely attractive in terms of spirituality. I mean, it's a very remote place for a start. These monks were inspired by the hermits of Egypt, who left the cities and towns of Egypt and went out and lived in the desert. The whole idea was to live in the presence of the divine. They believed that they could experience the presence of the divine in the beauty of nature, in magical things around them, living in the presence of wonder.
And so do you personally then, do you identify with the likes of Enda?
Oh, very much so, totally, in fact. The Catholic system is very emphatic on dogma and on what you believe. And what you believe, the creed, is the main thing that identifies you with that religion. What I learned about the Celtic was that the creed wasn't important. What was important was how you lived your life.
And do you find there's a great appetite for like what you're offering?
Yes, very much so. As people maybe move away from formal church practices, they need something else, especially the young people. And they're very attracted to nature. Sure, that's what the Celtic monks found too. Like, that's getting in touch with the divine in nature, you know? Brilliant.
And there's nowhere better to find the divine in nature than here on the Aran Islands. The forces of nature are tangible and dramatic. The landscape's stark but beautiful, and dominated by this limestone pavement. Here, Mediterranean and alpine plants grow side by side. The moist crevices provide shelter for these dwarf shrubs, while the hardier plants make their home in the gravel of the cracked surface. Sinead Keane is known as the Burren botanist. She knows as much as anyone about the plants and flowers that make the Aran Islands such a special place.
At first glance, when you look at the Aran Islands, you see vast areas of open rock, and it's hard to imagine that there's so many flowers here. But if you go in close and investigate and take your time to look around, you'll discover all of these beautiful wild flowers, and suddenly a whole world will be opened up to you. It's an island, so you're going to have lots of typical coastal habitats, coastal grassland, sand dune systems. But what makes it unique here is that the inland is made up of limestone pavement. So all of these combined, you get this really interesting mix of plants very close to one another. So it's a fabulous place to learn.
Many of these plants have medicinal properties, and over the years have been a lifeline for generations of islanders.
Within this meadow here, you could see lots of wild herbs, and right here we have a wild carrot. This plant was used for hundreds of years in Ireland as a medicinal plant. It has an affinity with the kidneys, so it's used as a diuretic. The root would be a pale colour by comparison to the regular carrot that you're used to growing in the garden or buying in the shop, but it's highly nutritious and would have served people very well during famine times.
It's this kind of ancient knowledge that Sinead wants to retain and record, to keep it as alive as the landscape itself.
A lot of our information was lost over time because it was passed down through the oral tradition. Very little information about how Irish people use plants was written down. Medicinal plants could be very important in the future. That's why it's very important to protect the diversity of our wildflowers.
Sinead isn't alone in wanting to protect the island's biodiversity. Modern farming practices brought in from the mainland have had a detrimental impact. But now, farmers are coming around. For Gráinne ní Chonaile on Inisheer, farming sustainably is key. She's found herself at the forefront of a local farming movement that takes inspiration from how things were done in centuries gone by.
If somebody asked me a few years ago if I was a farmer, I would have said no. But I am, and here I am now with Dad changing the cattle. You'll get a phone call every so often. Ron, are you ready? We're going now. We have to change them this minute. And you do, you know the way. But it's part of farm life and it's part of island life. So.
As well as working on the family farm, Gráinne is also heavily involved in a government-funded scheme aimed at promoting biodiversity on the island.
The more you work with the farm, and the more interested you get in it, and the more you realise the importance of it. Our aim was to encourage the farmers to continue farming in the traditional ways they've been doing for hundreds of years. And it's low intensity and without chemicals or fertilisers as such. It's all outhouse grazing. They graze the fields out the back of the island in the winter months, and then the summer months you bring them in closer to the houses, like where the deeper, richer soils are. That gives time then for the flowers to flower. The results have been amazing. The farmers themselves realise the importance of this kind of farming and that we conserve these beautiful fields and this landscape, you know, for the ones that come after us in years to come. I moved away from the island for a few years to go to school and go to college and stuff. When you're younger, you feel like, oh, it's a small place and you're kind of kept and you don't have as many opportunities as other places. You think, wow, there's so much out there. But you kind of realise we're from a very special, beautiful place. It's so peaceful and it's so tranquil. And you have time. I think you just have more time to enjoy life and to realise the importance of life.
As well as peace and tranquility, there's drama in the landscape here. Nowhere more so than when the full force of the Atlantic meets these dark, imposing cliffs.
This place, it's absolutely... When I'm stuck for words, as I often am, like many people, I turn to Seamus Heaney. He wrote this poem, Lovers on Aran. The timeless waves, bright, sifting, broken glass, came dazzling around into the rocks, came glinting, sifting from the Americas to possess Aran? Or did Aran rush to throw wide arms of rock around a tide that yielded with an ebb, with a soft crash? Did sea define the land or land the sea? Each drew new meaning from the waves' collision. Sea broke on land to full identity. That image of the waves crashing into the land, it's a meditation on love, I presume, and relationship. the arms of rock embracing the waves. It's elemental, like this place, like the Aran Islands itself.
And now the timeless waves are calling me to leave, because I have to move on to my next island. I'm heading south, down the coast to one of the most inaccessible of our Emerald Isles. Great Blasket is a remote island off the Dingle Peninsula, with just over 4 square kilometres of unspoilt terrain. Its permanent human residents are long gone, but they've left a haunting legacy. Now, I'm a bit wary about visiting this next island. For a start, it's a ghostly place, having been abandoned by its population many years ago. And also, like a lot of my compatriots, I was traumatized as a child by a grim school textbook in the Irish language set on the Blasket Islands. It's the autobiography of an old woman called Peig Sayers. I think it's time now to face the ghosts of the past. This island was once home to a fishing community of Irish speakers, Peig among them. But as living conditions deteriorated, the whole population was forced to emigrate over there to the mainland back in the 1950s. And as you can see now, it's been reclaimed by the natural landscape. Peig Sayers headlined the Irish curriculum during my time in school, and long before that. And I guess many of us struggled to understand why this piece of work was so important. For some people, this book, Peig's autobiography, it's a record of a forgotten past. For others, it's a treasury of Irish folklore. But for people like me, who had to study it at school, it's Ireland's original misery memoir. Here's how it starts. Sean van is a misha nish, a will coslay sanuig is on Cosella era Brook. I am an old lady now with one foot in the grave and the other foot on the edge. And as far as I remember, it doesn't get any lighter. But I'm intrigued to finally see the place she spoke so cheerlessly about. The island may be abandoned, but 2 caretakers are recruited each year to manage facilities for tourists who come to stay. They live without hot water or electricity, in conditions not dissimilar to Peig and the original islanders. Every year, tens of thousands of possibly mad people apply for each post. The current caretakers are Emily Campbell from West Cork and Daniel Regan from London. Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are
Emily.
you?
Hi.
Yes.
And Dan.
Hi. Yes, welcome to the island. How are you doing?
Thank you for having me. So why did you sign up for it? Like, where were you or what were you doing like before you came here?
We were living in London. I was working as a nurse and Dan as an engineer. The application just popped up on a Sunday in January. I was doing an overtime shift and I said to you kind of jokingly, like, oh, I'd love to apply. And he was like, yeah, do it. But we knew there was lots of applicants.
There were like thousands.
Yeah. We just got very lucky.
And was this always like a dream of yours, or were you just a bit stressed at the time?
I think we're kind of, getting a bit fed up of how busy London can be. It was, a no-brainer, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So, yeah, we jumped at the opportunity.
Yeah.
It's a massive change to being in London to suddenly being on a remote island, but we got used to it very quickly.
But does it not get lonely at times?
Not at all, really. We quite enjoy the balance of having visitors and then also having the island to ourselves.
We had a lady, her grandmother was born in that house, and then she came back from Springfield, Massachusetts, and stayed in it. So that was really special. Dan brought her up on the quad. I think she was like 87.
Yeah.
And,
Must have been quite
Arnie.
moving.
Yeah.
It was really special.
We feel that, the island is definitely go through moods, and it's funny how you could be really tired and then the island brings in a storm and you get some time to rest. Do you think there's something magical happening with the island? We've always got the seals to keep us company as well, so we enjoy sitting on the cliffs and watching them do their thing.
It's an amazing view.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd never get bored with that, would you? I've lived on a number of fictional islands during my career, and I couldn't hack it. I just don't know how you do it. I mean, when your time is up, do you think you'll be able to readjust to London life or city life?
I think city life is going to be difficult. I think we just need to think about what is going to bring us happiness in the future, I think.
The only permanent residents here today are the birds and the animals. And the sea around its shores is abundant with life. For Emily and Dan's closest friends here, the grey seals, the island is an important pupping site. Today, the seals have a guest heading their way. Ecologist and seal conservationist Jean Hamilton is making one of her regular trips over to count the seals and to check in on their well-being.
We are right now on the Great Blasket Island, looking out over Trawbawn, which means White Strand. This is the second biggest population of grey seals in Ireland. It can have upwards of 500 just even on this beach. At the moment, we're in the breeding season. And we've got 14 pups, which is great.
Uninhabited islands like this make great places for seals to breed. And the seals do so much for the wider ecosystem.
This island is uninhabited. In times gone past, when there were people living here and, out of, the harsh necessity of island life, they were actually hunted. Thankfully, they're left to their own devices now.
Since humans have left, the seal population has gone from strength to strength. But monitoring them is important work. And now there's nothing more that Jean likes than watching the pups grow and thrive.
They'll give birth anytime between August and February. Once the pups are born, they stay with their mothers for about 3 to 4 weeks while they're suckling. At that stage, they need to stay on the land because their fur isn't waterproof. So they need to then molt and develop their adult fur. They do feed quite intensively in the first few weeks. The mother's milk is very nutritious. It's got a very high fat content. They'll drink 3 litres a day. So they can put on like 30 kilos just in the first 18 days. 2 or 3 weeks later, they develop this round barrel shape. Then they have enough blubber and enough fat that they can go off by themselves into the water.
The absence of humans means nature is free to flourish. For the wildlife here on Great Blasket, this isn't the harsh environment that it was for the island's human inhabitants.
It's been an absolute privilege getting a brief insight into this forgotten corner of Ireland. And okay, I have to concede, my respect for Peig has grown enormously.
Right, I'm continuing south now, travelling further down the west coast of Ireland. It's a dramatic, jagged coastline of large bays, inlets and peninsulas. Valentia Island is one of Ireland's and Europe's most westerly points. The island is just 11 kilometres by 3, with a population of about 650. It's just a short hop from the mainland, though not necessarily the smoothest.
One of Ireland's most inaccessible islands to one of the more reachable ones, and at the moment, one of the windiest. Over there is the little island of Beginish, and straight ahead of us, Valentia. In fairness, the crossing is so short, I could put on my wellies and wade over. I'm not going to do that.
The western part of Valentia is dominated by the barren, dramatic cliffs of Bray Head. But I'm arriving on the eastern tip, into Knightstown, the largest settlement on the island. And on the edge of town here, a large building of even bigger historical significance.
Valentia is right on the edge of Europe. The nearest land over there? Yes, of course, it's North America. Newfoundland, to be precise. In fact, from here to there is the shortest possible distance across the Atlantic. That's why the aviator, Charles Lindbergh, he landed quite near here. It's also why the world's first successful transatlantic telegraph cable came ashore, right beside this building.
The first message: a treaty of peace has been signed between Austria and Prussia. It was 1866, and I'm sure the whole nation was hanging on that snippet of news. After that, you could buy a 20-letter message for a month's wage. Yeah, it makes mobile phone charges seem quite good value for money. But the history of the island goes back much further. The landscape here is alive with signs of the ancient past. This is a Bronze Age wedge tomb, about 4,000 years old. It's said that in the 19th century, a family actually lived inside it, until they were evicted. But in the great scheme of things, humans are relative newcomers here. And just to prove the point, in 1993, remarkable evidence of early life on land was discovered. And that's where I'm heading now.
Hundreds of millions of years ago, Ireland wasn't the island we know and love today. Where I'm walking now was actually part of a sub-equatorial river basin. You'll have to take my word for it. We were in the tropics. Now, when I say we, obviously we humans didn't exist. We were but a gleam in Mother Nature's eye. In fact, there was very little life on land. But some creatures were beginning to crawl out of the sea and evolve into land animals. And in doing so, they left footprints in the sand. And that's what I'm going to investigate.
On the shoreline here are fossilised footprints that are hundreds of millions of years old. They're among the oldest signs anywhere in the world of the first animals to step foot on land. Siobhan Ní Gonaghu is a local Valentian historian who studied the remarkable prints.
Hi, Siobhan. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
I don't even know what I'm looking for, to be honest with you.
So, if you look closely there, you can see the parallel footprints, little pock marks. They would have been bigger, but they've eroded
they look
over
up
time
about the
too.
size of an Alsatian's footprints.
Yeah, and you can see it veering over a little there.
These footprints are about 385 million years old, give or take a year. Up until this point, animal life was all in the sea. This is evidence of one of the earliest vertebrate life forms crawling out for the first time to explore the land. And it looked something like this. An aquatic, reptile-like creature with flipper-shaped legs.
It was probably like about a metre long, a lizard. And I'm sure he just came out for a wander, went back in for a swim again into the sea.
So there was really no life on land at that
None at all.
point
Plant
in
life.
history.
No animal life.
Yeah.
No.
Over time, the sand fossilised, leaving the prints in solid rock. And now, here they are, on the northern edge of what is now a little island off the coast of Ireland.
It's hard to believe that they're so well preserved, though.
I suppose they
to
were.
understand why.
So the creature would have walked on this, and it would have been semi-solid, and then whatever came next filled in with sand or something, and more rock compressed on top of it over hundreds of years. But the footprint stayed. Whatever filled in didn't like cement into them. So then over thousands of more years, all the rock has worn away, and they revealed them.
Footprints.
Yeah. I can almost picture a lizard-like creature walking here. Like, you could walk in the sand today and your footprints would be there.
Yeah.
And then think that in 385 million years, someone might go, that was the Homo sapiens.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, you can actually almost picture it walking.
No, it's remarkable.
Yeah. So, the very first, and it walked here.
The tetrapod prints were made at a time when life on land was new. Today, wildlife on the island is thriving. And the bird life is spectacular. And there's a wealth of marine life here. It's a special area of conservation. And in these waters, the largest oysters of Britain and Ireland have been found. For some, the world is their oyster. For former Olympic rower Natasha Howard, it's the oyster that's her world.
Oysters are one of those species that are just it looks like a rock. They're easy to see, they're easy to study. You can actually get hold of them, you can look at them.
Of course, Natasha and her team have no interest in eating these oysters. They're recording where they are, counting them within a sample area, and looking to see how healthy they are. It's important work because across the globe, oyster numbers are seriously declining. Overfishing and pollution have had a big impact. And around Britain and Ireland, there's been a shocking 95% drop in oyster numbers. And this loss has affected more than just the oysters.
The oysters themselves play a really important role within the marine ecosystem. They're filter feeders, so that means they suck water in, extract all the food that they need, and in the process they actually clean it up. They can take nitrates out of the water, they keep the water nice and clear for other animals, so then you have better fish populations.
A single oyster can filter up to 200 litres of seawater in a single day. Because of this, Natasha and the team want to encourage the oysters here on Valentia. And one way to do this could be to build a special oyster reef, expanding their habitat.
In terms of the reef restoration, it would be somewhere suitable so they wouldn't be disturbed. They like to settle on oyster shells and gravel. So you introduce lots and lots of empty oyster shells, and you spread them out on the seabed, and then the larvae just settle on them, and the reef begins to form.
An oyster reef would mean more oysters and a lot more other sea life too. It's a proactive kind of conservation that's really a win-win for everyone.
It's a vital part of the ecosystem, and without it, you've got half an ecosystem. You've got half the range of species that you might have if you actually had a fully functioning oyster reef out here.
In the meantime, these oysters will continue to be monitored for any further loss. But with Natasha and her team behind them, hopefully these remarkable creatures have a golden future ahead. Back on land, and enabled by its balmy climate, Valentia is home to a plethora of flora and fauna. The range of plant life is delightful. And the lush, colourful vegetation is here to be taken advantage of. Sustainably, of course, by the islanders. One couple who have taken advantage in a rather surprising way is Orla and Anna Snook O'Carroll. For them, the island's plant life and its rich, verdant land have led to the opening of a thriving business. Orla and Anna are Ireland's only vermouth producers. I have to say, vermouth is one of my favourite tipples. But theirs is a bit different. They forage for local ingredients, keeping their production sustainable.
The rules of foraging: pick when it's in abundance, so when there's a lot of it, and only pick 10% of what you can see. Here you go, Nanook. So it's all there for the ecosystem, for the animals, the birds, the insects.
The vermouth's main source of flavouring is this: wild gorse. And there's no shortage of gorse on Valentia.
Some gorse is one of the main flavours in our vermouth. Initially, when we were playing around with flavours, we tried the flower of the gorse and we were like, this is like vanilla and coconut. And it just literally just popped out in flavour. So we were delighted to use something that we pick on our doorstep.
Vermouth is essentially a fortified, flavoured wine. The first step is to steep the gorse in high-proof alcohol.
It absorbs the flavour of whatever you're steeping. So we're going to leave this to steep for approximately 1 week.
And then, as if by magic, we have something resembling gorsey vodka.
So you can see the beautiful colour that we've got in there, and that's the gorse flower. The flavour is now captured in there.
Ah, but it needs to be sweetened. To do that, Anna and Orla make their own caramel, which they dissolve into the mixture ready for the wine.
And then from that, we need to let it sit and bind in flavours, and then we'll filter it. And then it goes through a filling machine, and then it is bottled, labelled, ready to go out.
One bottle of gorgeous Irish vermouth. It's likely that this is the only gorse-flavoured vermouth in the world. It's a heavenly taste of the islands of Ireland.
I've never told anyone this before, and I hope it doesn't go any further, but I'm something of a vermouth aficionado. Got a taste for it on holidays in France one time. Always keep a bottle handy. That's none of your business. Anyway, this is the perfect way to end my trip to Valentia, sipping Irish gorse-flavoured vermouth. Sláinte. Oh, Where's the bottle?
Looking out across the Atlantic with the warmth of the vermouth inside me, there are two, yes, definitely two, jagged rocky islands that pierce the skyline. These are the Skellig Islands. And the further and larger of the two, Skellig Michael, is a World Heritage Site. I wasn't sure if I'd be able to go, but a slight break in the weather means that I have a chance. Skellig Michael lies 8 miles off the Kerry coast and is the crown jewel of Ireland's Emerald Isles. It's home to the most extreme and spectacular ancient monastery ever built. And if the sea allows it, I'm going to disembark on its treasured ground. "360 million years ago, this was once the summit of a mountain range that rose above a landmass south of the equator. Human history here is no less dramatic. 1,500 years ago, a group of monks rowed across this treacherous stretch of water and somehow clambered ashore.
I've wanted to visit this place for so long, and I mightn't look it, but I am quite excited. Nothing quite prepares you for the phenomenon that is Skellig Michael.
It's possible that even if you're not an expert in ancient monasticism, you may still recognize the island. Well, that could be because it was used as one of the main locations in Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Well, this is it. Luke Skywalker's island sanctuary on the planet Acto. More importantly, it's the home of the original Jedi, those brave monks who made the journey here in the early Middle Ages.
The monastery they built is perched right at the top, 218 meters, 600 steps up. And they didn't build a lift. It's a daunting climb. Clearly, I'm not as fit as those medieval monks.
No, I'm not contemplating life. I'm just looking at the puffins. They're ridiculously cute.
This is one of the best places in all of Ireland to see puffins up close. They arrive in April to breed, after spending months at sea without ever touching land. They are built for a life on the ocean, so they're understandably a bit wobbly on their feet. Each monogamous couple return to the same nesting burrow year after year. And this beak play is a sign of bonding and affection. They raise a single chick, known as a puffling. I'm not making this up. And for 6 weeks, both parents work tirelessly, making up to 100 fishing trips a day to feed their puffling. Unfortunately, I can't watch puffins forever. I have to keep climbing. There's someone at the top waiting for me. And no, he doesn't have a lightsaber. I've made it. And it's simply extraordinary. And somewhere in among these stones is historian and Irish scholar Liam Lynch.
Liam, there you are. Liam.
So,
Conas a hánig na manig an seo? Conas a bhar siad?
Hánadar dús beidir sa cúgu hís nó mar sin hánadar dús agus bhí cultúrán timpeall na hÉireann go raibh na mánaigh I dul gáithní ar gúta mar seo. Bhí macnamh agus bethe éanarach á lorga chuig gánaí. Bhí ar anna chóngrach do ghia.
For the monks, this would have been the very edge of the world. Nowhere else on earth can you find a more extreme example of monastic living.
Conas a hóg siad na furigna?
Is go raibh dar ag manachan so. Choída lena céile chun na céimena a chur le céile agus na clochána chur le céile agus gachród mar sin ach clochá túna gan áras. Bhí gná torthaíocha nás pisán, pónarí, oniún, mechan bán, mechan darag ceapan féin go raibh agus plándaí fiána comá.
Ní raibh muc nó bó nó capal?
Ní raibh táisna tús muc nó bó nó beidir cuireadh ach bhí gairán cercalóir. Mar sé an obair a bhí a dhéanamh chu chrúig siad na gaiir agus is tócha bhór siad an feolas na gair comá agus gan áras íocha na néanlathe comá agus feol na néanlathe féin comá.
Puffins?
Well, gachsáid sé is tócha. Ní féidir idir eadúil idir Yellow Yenov, Mavian Ocrasort, agus Dishy Ganedi, agus Lucresan, agus Lehedi Marchin, agus Shin Conasavardar.
I'm still struggling to contemplate how they survived out here. The obstinacy of them, the sheer stubbornness. I'm sure Luke Skywalker would have struggled too. What chance Father Dougal? And what's perhaps most impressive of all is that this 6th century settlement is still standing, almost as perfectly as the day it was built. A testament to their astonishing engineering.
I can safely say this is one of the most special places I've ever been to. I can understand why the monks would want to retreat from the world and settle here. But I'm struggling to imagine how they survived. It's humbling to walk in their steps in this profoundly spiritual place. And as ever, one is overawed by the power of the sea and the power of nature, the power of God, if you like. And you're forced, actively forced, to contemplate your tiny place in the greater scheme of things. This is a perfect place to end this part of my journey.
Next time, I finish my journey through the Emerald Isles in the deep south. A land where eagles soar and dolphins dance. From sublime subtropical wonder to seascapes as pretty as a picture. And with a history as remarkable as any in Ireland.